Right, we're now being streamed. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to members, officers, the press, public and applicants joining the Strategic Development Committee. The meeting is also, as I said, being live streamed on YouTube. So welcome to anybody who is viewing us online. To minimise travel and maintain social distancing, most officers are joining this evening's meeting via Zoom. Can I check that those present in the room can hear me? And those online, if you could wave or give some other physical sign of assent that you can hear me, that's great, thank you. I need to apologise, I've got a bit of a cold this evening. It's not COVID, I do keep testing. I'm going to put this mask on when I'm not speaking to try and save you all from my germs, but if I start hacking or sound hoarse, then that's why. My name's Councillor Rachel Tripp. I'm the chair of the Strategic Development Committee. If you are physically present and you have a face mask and you're comfortable to wear it, please do so. Those joining us via Zoom, please mute your microphone if you're not speaking. And I'm now going to ask the members of committee and officers to introduce themselves. I start with Carleen.
Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Carleen Lee Parkway, Plaistow South Councillor.
Hi, I'm Councillor Rohit Das Gupta, Councillor for Canning Town South.
Thank you. And I suggest we get officers to introduce themselves in the order in which they appear in the agenda.
I'm Jane Costance. I'm the Director of Planning and Development. Sorry, the sun finally is coming through my window, so it's not like encounters of the third kind here. Over to James.
Hello, everyone. I'm James Bolt. I'm Senior Development Manager.
And from legal, we have Ola with us, Chair. Her video's not working.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shola Lukoshi from the legal team. I'll be giving legal advice tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
I'd like to remind members that when a vote is taken, it will be by way of raising our hands physically so that we can capture this on screen. Item number 1 is apologies. Have we received any apologies for this evening?
Yes, Chair, and with apologies from Councillor Joshua Garfield and Councillor Harvinder Singh Verdi, who's joining us via Zoom.
Noted, thank you.
Councillor Beckles.
Yes, Councillor Beckles is on his way. Item number 2 is the minutes from our previous meeting, which was held on the 16th of December 2021. May I take those minutes as a true record of our meeting? Agreed. Thank you. Item number 3 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest for tonight? Councillor
Yes, so I sit on the Royal Docks Management Authority, which is interested in first. And I've also attended one of the consultation meetings with the Good Hotels. I don't know if that needs to be declared as well.
I think we can add that to the minutes just so that we're being transparent. Thank you. No additional items of no additional declarations of interest. Thank you. In which case we move on to item 4, which is determining planning applications. Members are asked to note the advice from the Head of Legal Services on determining planning applications. Is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. Item number 5, announcements from the Chair. We've received the following requests to address the committee. If speakers could please identify themselves when I call out your name. Under item 6, the Good Hotel, we have Martin Dresden.
Yes.
And Chris Gascoigne. Thank you. Under item 7, 292 to 294 Ashett Grove, I have Rob Pearson. Joined us, and also Imran Wahid. Also not here yet. Item 8, which is the development site at Hathaway, Crescent. Jerry Cassidy. Neil Campbell. The gesture makes me think that he may be on Zoom. Neil Campbell.
I'm here. Yeah, on Zoom.
Great.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. Also, Azri Azra. Mazhar Ali.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And Sam Risby.
Yes, present.
Great, thank you very much. The usual practice is to allow up to 5 minutes in total for both supporters and objectors, although we don't have objectors registered to speak today. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And can we agree the remainder of the order of business as outlined on the agenda? Thank you. Would members please note the officer update report, which was circulated to us earlier today. Please also note that the full consideration and planning assessment of matters is covered comprehensively in the committee report. I trust members have had full regard to the committee report, so the officer presentation will be a summary of the key issues only. So may I please call on the applicants team for item 6, which is the Good Hotel, to address the committee.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair.
Shirley, are you okay to keep time? Lovely.
We do have a presentation, which I understand is loaded up. Joy, should we just say next slide when we'd like you to move on, if that's okay? Brilliant. Good evening. I'm Chris Gascoigne from Untitled, here with Martin from the Good Hotel. All of the many people sitting behind us, they're all here with us in case you have any detailed questions. So we have our architect, our energy consultant. We also have a local resident, a local business person in support of the hotel, along with the hotel manager and the person that works for the hotel who's involved in all of the really good training work that they do. So just in case you've got any questions on those more detailed elements, we thought we'd bring them along. Shirley, do you want to kind of tell us when our 5 minutes?
You can start now.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Martin Dressen. I'm the founder of the Good Hotel, and I was actually at this committee, even though it was, I think, in a Stratford location 5 years ago, when your membership, the committee kindly agreed to grant us a temporary planning permission for this beautiful location in the Royal Victoria Dock. And that's when we brought it in right there on another ship, on another barge. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please, John.
Since then, we've been very proud to call Newham and the Royal Docks our home. Pleased to say that the hotel's been a success. And not just as a hotel, but especially as a hub for the local community.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, so what we did not yet fully realize maybe 5 years ago when we came in is just how befitting the Newham location is for the Good Hotel. Because the Good Hotel exists for training and for education, which this is me a while ago in Guatemala, meeting this girl and starting to sort of want to help her and her family in the village and building a school and then a couple of other schools. And basically out of that grew the Good Hotel to create jobs and training. And then we came here 5 years ago, and then Newham has made community wealth building a core part of this borough, which we are absolutely so proud of to be a part of. So next slide, please. We are very happy to be able to play a role in the future of the Royal Docks, which in the end is all about the people. How can we create a place that is really there for the people and that creates opportunities? And in that light, I thought it was really nice to share, insofar as you might not have seen it yet. We have this Docklands People photography exposition on the boat right now, which is by Trinity Buoy Wharf, sponsored by the Royal Docks team. It's amazing. It's really beautiful. And to me, it's the essence of basically the history and sort of the people of the docks. So you're super welcome to come see it if you haven't yet. Next slide, please. Because that brings me to our people and our team, which I'm so proud to say, our team really takes pride in the social and community ethos, which shows that it's not, it's being used as a hotel, yes, but it's also being used by local community groups, local artists, basically as a place where friends and family like to hang out. We partner with a bunch of charities and basically in that light have really been rewarded. I'm really proud to say the community has been very good to us in terms of choosing us as a venue for many of these events, and also even recognizing some of our staff with some very cool awards. Next slide, please. Yet our proudest achievement, I have to say, it has been the Good Training Program, which we are running in partnership with our Newham Work. I gotta hurry up. Andrew Perkins is here from our Newham Work. So if you have questions about that, it's a 4-month bespoke training program, which works really well. We've trained loads of candidates and 70% of them have structurally gone into hospitality jobs, and we keep in touch with them. Actually, today we celebrated the first group graduating after COVID, which was a beautiful moment. But I'll have to keep it short and hand over because really we're here for planning considerations, which this man knows all about. So, Chris.
Can I just, sorry, if you don't mind, Shelley, can you just minimise the pictures so that we can actually see the whole screen?
You're winning some time here.
Yeah, it's okay. I think it's
That line, yes.
That one.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Next slide, please. Joy. Thank you. Hi, I'm Chris Gascoigne, a planning consultant at DP9. In about September last year, Martin asked me to get involved to advise him on the changes needed to make this hotel acceptable on a permanent basis. And the first thing we did, of course, was speak to your officers and those at the GLA to kind of find out what we needed to do. They were really clear, 3 things. Increase the amount of accessible wheelchair rooms, encourage the active use of the water and make the hotel more sustainable. I'm pleased to say that we think we've addressed all of those 3. Next slide, please. The first thing on access. So the number of accessible rooms has increased to 15% in accordance with your policy. Next slide, please. In terms of activating the water, and we were encouraged, we put new boat moorings in to make the space, and also, sorry, made the space available for open water swimmers. We've got representatives from the open water swimming group here this evening. Also some new floating ecosystems in the dock. I'm really pleased to say that our urban greening factor and our biodiversity net gain are way in excess of your policies. Next slide, please. And of course, sustainability. So this is a really unique case, right? We're dealing with a hotel which is on a floating platform that was constructed 15 years ago under Dutch building regulations. So we asked ourselves, what can we do to improve the sustainability performance of the building? Hawley are with us, they're the experts on energy and they've advised us if you've got detailed questions. But the existing hotel basically has existing oil burning boilers. These are not sustainable and we're getting rid of them. We then looked at the energy hierarchy. So what should we do? And the best thing to do is to connect to the district heat network at XL. So that's what we're committed to doing as a 106 obligation about that, as well as putting new PV panels on the roof. So together these measures will result in very, very significant improvements in carbon savings compared to the existing hotel. It's also really important to remember that this hotel already exists. So its retention results in the reuse of existing materials in accordance with policy of circular economy and whole life carbon. So overall, we've worked really hard to embrace new technologies and optimise the sustainability of this very unique floating hotel. And we're pleased that this is recognised and considered acceptable by your officers in their report. Next slide, please. It's a final slide, if that's okay. So that in terms of other planning benefits, I just really echo Martin's comments on the amazing training programme that helps so many unemployed Newham residents. It's also great to see that there are more public comments registered in support of the hotel than there are objecting, which is a real testament to the success of the hotel. Finally, we'd like to thank your officers. They've been really clear what we needed to do to make this hotel acceptable, and we hope that members will agree with the officer recommendation to grant planning permission. We'd of course be very happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time. And sorry we went a little bit over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now ask our officer, Claire Newitt, to give the officer presentation.
Is someone able to allow me to share my screen?
You've been made co-host now, so you should be able to share your screen.
Thank you.
There might be a slight delay, but if so, it seems that it just takes a moment for it to pop up on our screens, but it should work. Here we go, we can see it.
Everybody see that?
Yes, we can see that. Do go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Item 6 relates to the Good Hotel on Western Gateway in Canning Town. The Good Hotel is located in the Royal Victoria Dock. The surrounding areas comprise of a mix of uses, including some tall residential buildings, some commercial premises, recreational activities, restaurants. The XL is located to the east of the site, Whilst to the west of the site, you've got the Emirates cable car, and beyond that, the Crystal building, which has become the new home to the Mayor of London quite recently. You can see the Good Hotel in situ here. It's been in situ since 2016 when we granted planning permission, temporary 5-year planning permission. This application seeks planning permission for the permanent retention of the hotel, i.e. the mooring of a 160-room hotel on a floating platform with associated access, car parking and landscaping. There have been some amendments to the scheme during the course of the application, and reconsultation was carried out. This includes the increase in the number of hotel rooms from 148 to 160, including alterations to the layout and number of wheelchair accessible rooms, the submission of a framework water activation strategy, including new boat moorings, the submission of an energy and sustainability statement addendum, public realm improvements, the submission of an ecological assessment, and the provision of other supporting information and justification. These are some photos of the hotel in situ taken from Western Gateway, and some photos taken from the cable car and outside of the cable car entrance. Some elevations of the vessel, and the front and rear elevations. The key planning considerations in this case relate to the principle of development, design, impact upon amenity, transport and travel, inclusive access, and energy and sustainability. So it's the principle of development. Firstly, visitor economy and employment. The hotel would have local employment benefits and assist growth in the conference, tourism and leisure industries within the borough and across London. The hotel employs an average of 60 people and offers work experience and hospitality training to unemployed local residents. The hotel has developed a number of positive supply chain relationships with local businesses in the support services, marketing and tourism sectors. The economic impact of the Good Hotel's customers can be estimated at £14 million per annum. Additionally, the Good Hotel has worked with a number of local charities, including Crisis, to offer accommodation and food for homeless people. London Waterways. It is acknowledged that the permanent mooring of the Good Hotel would amount to an extension of developable land into the waterways. However, it would simultaneously support water-related activities and other moorings, and would also provide greater public access to the water. The principle of development is therefore supported. Design. The height and massing of the building is not excessive and is mitigated to a certain extent by the setback and level difference from the dock edge. However, it does still obstruct some views of the water. The external materials are considered to be of acceptable quality and appearance. Assurances have been made that the materials can be maintained to retain the long-term appearance of the hotel. The hotel has a prominent entrance, enhancing its legibility alongside a number of large windows, providing a greater degree of natural surveillance to the dock. The hotel is manned 24/7 and benefits from CCTV. The setback from the dock edge allows for an open frontage and public realm, activating the street scene from either approach of Western Gateway. The frontage would provide additional seating and planting aimed at facilitating the use and enjoyment of the water, full details of which will be secured by condition. On balance, the proposals in terms of design are supported. As you'll note, a number of objections from neighbouring occupants have received. However, in terms of outlook, privacy, daylight and sunlight, given the scale of the hotel and separation to neighbouring buildings, it's considered that there would be no significant adverse impact. The nature of the use raises the potential for noise generation. Mitigation measures such as operational hours and situating service and back of house function to the lower floors and to the rear of the vessel would assist in reducing this noise generation. Furthermore, the surrounding area experiences significant background noise from existing transport infrastructure, and therefore the permanent siting of the hotel would have a negligible impact on noise levels. In terms of littering, an operational management plan and a waste management plan is implemented at the site, and environmental health officers have not received any complaints with regards to littering. It is not anticipated that the permanent siting of the vessel would have a significant impact on the potential for littering in the area. The proposals in terms of the impact on amenity are supported. As the transport and travel, the proposed pedestrian, cycle and vehicular access would be unchanged. These arrangements are considered to be acceptable. With regards to parking, the development is car-free, with the exception of 4 blue badge parking spaces to the front of the vessel. Staff and visitors would be prevented from applying for parking permits as part of the Section 106 agreement. A parking bay for deliveries and drop-off area for taxis and coaches is provided. 13 long-stay cycle parking spaces are located at ground floor level, whilst 3 short-stay spaces are set within the public realm on Western Gateway. This cycle provision is considered to be sufficient. There is potential for the TfL cycle hire scheme to be extended in the area, and this will be secured, and a documentation could be secured as part of the Section 106 agreement. The hotel utilises on-street servicing bays 50 metres from the service entrance to the vessel. Fuel is delivered twice a month, whilst other deliveries are predominantly made by light vans. Deliveries are managed via an online booking system, requiring suppliers to book time slots to avoid conflict and traffic generation in the area. Waste is stored at ground level within the vessel and is collected via the on-street servicing bays approximately 5 times a week. The applicant has made a commitment to provide an up-to-date travel plan and appropriate targets, which will be secured by condition. The proposals in terms of transport and travel are supported. Following alterations to the scheme, the percentage of wheelchair accessible hotel rooms has increased from 3% as existing to 10%. That would consist of 5% accessible and 5% ambulant. A further 5% of rooms have been identified as future accessible, meaning this figure has the potential to rise to 15%, and this is London Plan compliant and will be secured by condition. In addition to the wheelchair accessible rooms, the vessel has a DDA compliant ramp at the entrance, lifts to all floors and provides blue badge parking spaces. Subject to conditions, the proposals in terms of inclusive access are supported. Energy and sustainability. The proposals focus their carbon saving on B clean and B green measures, comprising of a potential connection to the district heat network and installation of PV panels. The measures would only provide a 9% reduction in carbon, a significant shortfall in relation to the London Plan requirement of 35% on-site savings. However, on balance, the significant benefits of the scheme are considered to outweigh this shortcoming. The whole life carbon and circular economy benefits of the proposals, given the reuse of existing materials, are also noted. The applicant will be required to make a carbon offset payment for the remaining 91%. Compliance with BREEAM Very Good certification has also been secured via condition. The proposals in terms of energy and sustainability are supported. Consultation was carried out with neighbouring occupants, and reconsultation was carried out following the receipt of amended plans. We did receive a number of both objections and letters of support. These are noted in the committee report and addressed in the committee report as well. Officer recommendation. The Strategic Development Committee is asked to note the committee update and resolve to agree the reasons for approval as set out in the report, refer this application to the Mayor of London as a Stage 2 referral, and subject to the Mayor of London advising that he is content to allow the Council to determine the application itself, delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Development to grant planning permission subject to the completion of a legal agreement under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act, based on the heads of terms identified at Appendix 2 of the report and the conditions listed in Appendix 1 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to turn to colleagues. Also, welcome, Councillor Griffiths, who's joined us. As you've come partway through the item, I think that you won't be able to vote, but thank you for coming anyway, and we will welcome your input into the next 2 items. Carleen and Rohit, do either of you have any questions, either for the officer or for the applicant?
Yeah, I can. So thank you very much for this. I guess I had a couple of comments and then also questions. So I guess my comment was, of course, I think I'm very keen to hear more about the good training program and the upskilling and what kind of work has been happening, because I mean, I have heard some of it, and it's obviously really excellent. But I just wanted to find a little bit more from you guys. And then the questions I had, one, looking at some of the comments that have come about ASB, given you've also got a rooftop space, so I guess how are you going to balance, given this is a residential area, how are you going to balance ASB issues? What kind of measures are being taken for that? This includes both sound as well as rubbish being thrown elsewhere. And the second point I had was about this is obviously a car-free development, but there's also accessibility issues. What's being done for those disabled residents who might want to come and who would have to travel by car?
Thank you. I'd like to ask the applicant to respond to those.
Thank you. So should we take your helpful comment first? Thank you regarding the training. I suppose in summary, I think since the beginning, or kind of pre-COVID, since the hotel opened, I think 114 local unemployed people have been trained on the Good Training programme, of which I believe like 70% go on to further full-time employment. If you'd like to hear more about the details of the training programme, that's all Martin might want to elaborate on that, and then we've got some of the team here that can really go for it in more detail. Should we do that now before we then take the questions?
Sure. Yeah, well, maybe actually I should pass on to Tony, who runs the training program for the Good Hotel, and maybe even Andrew on behalf of our Newham work. That's okay? Yeah.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm the Training and Development Manager at the Good Hotel, and I have had the pleasure, since joining the hotel, to run the programme. Since COVID, for the last 2 years, we have been unable to run the programme. But today, we have had our graduates. We've had our graduation. For the last 4 weeks, our trainees in partnership with Newham have come through. They've learned about hospitality. They've learned about self-awareness. They've learned about foods and drinks from all over the world. And today, I've had the pleasure at our graduation of seeing development, confidence. I've seen the twinkle in their eye that says, I know what I want to do. And that is promising. That is promising for the future. And I can stand here and say, I look forward to the next batch during it. Thank you.
If I could just add to that. So my name is Andrew Perkins, and I work for Our Newham Work, which is based on the Grove Library, which I'm sure you all know. I've got first-hand experience of seeing residents in who are in a very, very bad situation and not knowing what they want to do in life, or they may have lost jobs pre-COVID, or they just need to step up because nobody would ever give them a chance. So for us to have a program like the Good Hotel, the Good program, and send them, that they will look after any candidate we put forward, and retrain them, and not just the retraining in the veterinary industry, but just inspiring them to kind of get up in the morning and want to go to work and do something else. There's nobody else that can do that, and it really is an absolutely phenomenal thing that they do, and I'm glad to do it.
Thank you. So before we come back to Rohit's comments about ASB and litter and about accessibility, could I just check in terms of the previous planning condition, which was about 50% of jobs going to Newham residents? Is that something that you've met?
Far exceeded, as I understand it.
Yeah. Do you know what sort of percentage you were looking at?
Currently, the jobs high, I'm the general manager of the hotel. We've got about 65% of our team members being Newham residents.
Okay, thank you.
So a couple of the other comments on antisocial behaviour, and also the kind of the car free and the approach for accessibility. I'll take the access one first, if that's okay, Councillor. So one of the main things we've done with the application is to change it actually, and so to increase the amount of wheelchair accessible rooms, to improve the level of accessibility to the hotel, so it's all DDA compliant. We also have so step free access to all parts of the hotel, and there are 4 accessible car parking bays which are located kind of within 50 metres of the hotel entrance, and it's also a level access to there. So hopefully that answers your question. In terms of the comment about antisocial behaviour, in the committee report, forgive me, I don't have page numbers on the version that I've got, but it's probably really important to note the comments from the Metropolitan Police directly, who were consulted on this application. And they've identified that whilst there had been a handful of objections from local residents regarding noise and antisocial behaviour, they said that the number of complaints is very, very low compared for what you'd expect for a venue of this type, and they didn't raise any objection. But nonetheless, we also do have an operational management plan, which I think is constantly evolving, we're constantly learning from, which has kind of hours of operation in place. I know you're quite strict about how the outdoor spaces and the roof terrace are used. And then on the point about litter, again, there's a commitment in the operational management plan, both to pick up litter kind of ourselves, but also to work with the Royal Docks management team. And if there are, for example, larger pieces of litter that have found their way into this part of the dock, to kind of alert them and make sure that it's picked up. I don't know whether you wanted to add anything, guys, on the management perspective about the ASB side of things, if that's okay.
Exactly what you said. We've got a program in place with big litter throughout the day, all the time. It's the impression of our guests in the hotel. Nobody needs to be clean, needs to be tidy. And in terms of noise, yes, we listen and making sure we get the noise. We have a license until 9 p.m. But it's reasonable hours. We obviously respect our residents.
Yes, go ahead.
So at 9 p.m. the rooftop terrace closes. Okay.
And I just add the, sorry.
I was just going to say, for reference, I think the response from the Metropolitan Police about designing out crime is on page 48 of our committee papers.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Claire, I cut you off. Do you go ahead?
Thank you. We've added a condition on, it's condition 10 regarding CCTV, requiring full details of that within 3 months of the permission, if permission is granted, so that we, in another attempt to reduce neighbours' concerns about antisocial behaviour.
That's helpful, thank you. Colleen.
Thank you, Chair. I want to go back to your contribution, my love, in regards to 65% of employees at the Good Hotel are Newham residents. My question is how of that number, how much of that number, the percentage, are of senior positions, and how much are compared to that of domestic positions, if you don't mind? And then I have a couple of other questions. Now I can't find where I've highlighted them in the page. You can answer that while I find the other questions.
Do it statistics available for the number of existing employees?
Made statistics,
Yeah.
but
Any examples, perhaps? If there are any new employees in more senior
I can give
positions?
one example which it makes me proud. It's for example, our first employee. I mean, sadly she couldn't be in the room today, but our first trainee from the group 1, Anna. She started as a junior chef, so she is commis chef right now and helps really in the kitchen. But not only that, she brought in her daughter. She didn't go through the program, but she just applied as a junior waitress. And now she works in meeting and events as a manager, manages team, gone through different journeys within hotel operation, as a night manager, as a duty manager, and now it's event. So it's her daughter and her progressing together. Also, we receive a lot of recommendations quite often. We get our team members through recommendations. People recommend them to come and join.
And just to add to that, Council, I've just double checked that it's correct. So every vacancy in the hotel at all positions goes through Newham Workplace as well.
Okay. So I guess the question I'll pass over to Newham Workplace, because of those residents that you send via the pathway of the workplace, you must have an understanding of how many of those get those senior positions.
Yeah, well, when we actually start the programme, they get trained into everything. So once they start the programme, after the 3 months of the programme, sometimes they do stay with the hotel, but they partner up with hotels around East London, and then they move on, and they get a new career and a new job within another hotel. So sometimes they may move up, sometimes they may go somewhere else. That's something I don't personally track.
Okay, it would be really good to understand the numbers in relation to, it's very easy to say, make comments like 65%, but if all those 65% are your domestic staff, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with domestic staff, but also I know, as being a resident here in Newham, that we have some very capable residents that could do those really good positions. And I appreciate that you are a stepping stone for what much more can come. But and they may stay in and remain with your organisation. But I would like to know, in actual fact, how much of those jobs are going into those senior positions to new residents, to really understand how much investment is really being made. I have another couple of questions. So I noted on the page 44 of our report, one of the objections, of which there was quite a few, and I appreciate that a lot of what was the officer comments has alleviated some of my concerns. But there was a question here about the diesel boiler, and I'm sure I heard you say something about that in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I just wanted reassurances that obviously this is something that's going to be looked at in regards to energy and sustainability, and that's going to be sooner rather than later.
100%. It's, well, so firstly, remember, it's a vessel, it's a ship, which is why it had that in the first place, and that was acceptable 5 years ago. It's not acceptable now to burn fossil fuels. Martin's sitting here nodding. So one of the first things we're committing to in the energy strategy is to connect to the district heat network, which will mean that getting rid of that diesel burning boiler.
Diesel's getting so expensive. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
We're getting rid of it.
But that's not the only reason why you're getting rid of it.
No.
That's been very recent. We have the reason.
Yeah, I mean, your office has been very clear with us that has to go, and we completely agree. Totally.
Okay, and there was a couple of, if you don't mind, Chair.
Yep, no, go ahead.
So you had, I read in regards to the application itself, there doesn't seem to be that much that I can ask about because it is quite straightforward, the application. However, I am picking up on, I think when you get 48 objections, you have to think about why there was 48 objections. So looking through those, one of the things that isn't concerning, but I thought I would mention, I spoke about the water pollution and the littering that's causing stagnant water. I'll be honest, I've never been there, so I don't know what we're talking about here, but I do know that stagnant water is not pleasant. And so I'm wondering how it is that you guys are making sure that that doesn't continue in relation to what's happening within the water within your Pacific space. And then I think I'm then thinking about the things that you had up on your presentation. You talked about open water swimming.
Yes. Right.
So just making sure that water that swimmers are going to be using is not contaminated with what it is that's been discussed here in this document. Is there any reassurances? Please?
Absolutely. The first thing to say is that because of southwesterly winds, a lot of litter kind of gets blown to that part of the dock anyway. But what the Good Hotel does is two things. One, it takes responsibility for that litter that gathers there and picks it all up. And as I mentioned earlier, if there are, for whatever reason, larger items of litter that have blown in, they work with the GLA Royal Dock Seaman Rodmer to ensure that those are removed. There's specific conditions and controls in the operational management plan around kind of committing to do that as well. And absolutely, we want to embrace and welcome the open water swimmers. A representative is here this evening, and so it's absolutely in everybody's interest to ensure that the dock is kept as clean as possible and that there's commitments to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I see that Councillor Singh Verdi's raised his virtual hand. Did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question carrying on from Councillor Parkway is the diversity and the age groups of the trainers and also the staff that's working. How reflective is that of the community we currently have? Thank you.
Yes, I don't have hi everyone. Don't have specific number, but our it is very diverse. We got from 17 years old to 65, so they're all different backgrounds and age. There is no restrictions.
And I can vouch for that by the candidates that I put forward. That there is no age restrictions whatsoever.
Thank you. I did have a few questions and I'll come back to you, Rohit. That's all right. I might do these in small groups. The first one I really wanted to ask was to get your thoughts on what seems to be a bit of a kind of disjunct between the information that we're getting in terms of the objections, which obviously we have seen before as well, and then the information that you're giving us about sort of great community relationships and local families using it as a meeting place. And I wondered how you kind of squared that circle, or whether you were surprised by some of the objections that we've been looking at today.
I'll try and answer that.
Go ahead.
So I think when we look at a perhaps a theme running through some of the objections. It's people who maybe live directly adjacent to it and who don't want the hotel blocking their views of the dock. That seems to be quite a consistent theme that comes up. And at the same time, and we've got representatives from local residents and from local businesses here as well. I don't know if any of you have been to the hotel, but the foyer there is buzzing all the time with people meeting for a coffee, people using it as a place to work, people meeting friends, but also some very well organised community events that go to the heart of what the social business is all about. So I think our understanding is that it's really well used by the local community, and that's not just people living right next to it. It's the whole of the kind of the Royal Docks area uses it for a real variety of functions. And so I think, being honest, perhaps it's inevitable that some people who live directly opposite would rather look out over the water, and that's reflected in comments. But I mean, that's, again, correct me if I'm wrong, officers, but views from private properties is not a material planning consideration. But then, reflected in all the positive comments, and it's great to see there's more people who have taken the time to register in support than object, which I'm sure you'll agree is quite unusual in planning anyway. People taking the time to actually in support shows that kind of the strength and breadth of the local feeling. If it would be helpful, we do have a local resident and local businessman here. If you would like to hear from them, they've taken time to come this evening to do that. So it's entirely up to you if that would be helpful.
I think, it would probably be helpful to hear briefly, please.
First, as a resident.
Yeah, sure. My name is David Ray Scott. I live in Oceanus Apartments, which is literally right across from the hotel. And I've been living there for about 11 years. And I'm also a member of one of the phase, which is takes into account 4 different hotel blocks, the Residents Association. It's the only hotel in the area, and there are a number of hotels, that has actually reached out to the community to ingratiate themselves within the community and embrace the community within the hotel. Desi and her team, who throw the doors of their hospitality. To me, it's not just run as a hotel. It helps the community from developing the people who are unemployed and who need work, which we're obviously aware of in the community, but it actually reaches out to us from a more social point of view. The other hotels in the area, which I'm not going to name any of them, you're obviously aware that they are, seem to work on they're very corporate, they're very profit driven, they just care about bottom line, whereas Desi, her team, Martin and everybody I've been involved with at the beginning as a resident and use the hotel on a regular basis. I've never known any problems with regards to antisocial behaviour. I use the roof terrace, I use underground. I've had friends I'm from Scotland, and friends who visit us have stayed in the hotel and speak very, very highly of the hotel. And I feel that the hotel is an integral part of the community. A lot of the rubbish, which as a resident I'm also aware of, and Raj as a businessman, a lot of it is brought from people who come from outside the area, who go on the cable car and they leave their rubbish and everything else. It's not actually driven by the hotel, it's driven by people from outside. And they make the effort to, like a lot of people, I know it might sound crazy, but when I'm out with my dog, I'll pick up stuff that other people have left. So we all bring our little bit together to enhance the community.
That is helpful, thank you. And thank you for coming. If you want to speak briefly, that would be very much welcomed as well.
My name is Raj Chauhan. We've been in the area since 2005. Effectively, we were the first business to open in that Excel area. And the Good Hotel has been the only one that has actually reached out to us from all the other hotel groups and all the other businesses. And we supported them in the beginning because we thought it'd be a great thing. And our coffee shop actually faces the Good Hotel. And we don't have any customers who actually say, I don't like it. Because they can see it, it's there, and they can see the water as well. And as for the rubbish that you're saying, we found where we are that there's other traders who are in front of the Good Hotel who sell their goods. And though there isn't sufficient dustbins for them to put it, so then these people, they take the rubbish and they'll throw it in the water. No one comes out of the Good Hotel with a bag or in any food that we've seen. It's these people who are outside, and that's where all of the rubbish is coming from. It's quite good of them actually to clean up. So, I mean, it's like a family. They're like a family to us now. So, and even with the training as well, I've been talking today, we need staff now so that they've got the training program going now. So we're looking at trying to get staff from them. So hopefully it's going to help us as well. Thank you.
That's helpful. Thank you also to you for coming. I did have a couple of questions about the outside. I wondered whether 3 short stay bike stands was enough. Obviously, the kind of principle behind cycle parking is very much kind of like, if you build it, they will come. And also, I wanted to pick up on one of the comments, or I think there were a couple of comments about the quality of some of the external landscaping. There were some people saying that what had been initially promised hadn't happened, or that a tree had been dead and left there for a while. I was just keen to hear your comments on that as well, please.
Very valid comments, both of which your officers have been all over and have put some very good conditions on the consent for.
As I would expect, thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm taking the public one first. So condition number 8 talks about that. Basically, what we were asked to do, which we've submitted, is some indicative public realm improvements, potential some seating, some planting, etc. And we've got a condition here that says within 3 months of, if hopefully planning permission is granted, we need to submit full details of the public realm improvements. We've already, well, Martin and his team have spoken to the GLA Raw Docs team, who have their own condition to bring forward public realm improvements linked to the Crystal building and the GLA's use of that. So we're trying to partner with them actually, so that you have a singular approach to public realm, so we don't do something and then GLA something. So the plan is for something very holistic there, and there's a condition to secure that. In terms of the cycle parking, I think we believe we are policy compliant in terms of the cycle provision, but we also have a planning condition, he says, trying to find the number. I think it might be condition number 2, there we go. I'm right at the beginning. So condition number 2, so within 3 months, again, of hopefully the planning permission being granted, full details of the cycle provision, which must be in accordance with TfL's London Cycle Design Standards, need to be submitted and approved. So we think we are compliant already, but we'll go through that process and ensure that we are, Chair.
I mean, I guess from my point of view, there's compliant, and then there's having.
And we do more.
Yeah, well, having a good, accessible, visible, well-lit parking, which is right by the entrance, and which says, even to people arriving by foot, hey, you could arrive by bike, and it would be easy and straightforward if you wanted to. My final question is a more general one, which is, I appreciate the environmental points about using this structure which exists already and about the environmental benefits of that. But I guess linked to that in my mind is this question of whether the building is kind of up to it, given that it was built initially, presumably for 5 years, and is now being is now going to have its life extended onwards. Can you reassure us in that, both in terms of the appearance of the building, but just also in terms of like the safety and ongoing use of it over a longer period of time than was initially envisaged?
Absolutely. So firstly, it's absolutely the right questions to ask. So we've, and it's we as a team have probably spent most time thinking about, which is how can an existing floating vessel be upgraded to meet today's standards. So taking your point about materials, something that the GLA actually asked as well, and we've submitted some information which goes through kind of the schedule of each of the materials and explains why they're very robust and fit for purpose over a much longer lifespan. We've got Nigel from the architects here who can talk about that in much more detail. I think exactly the same goes for the point around safety. A full review has been done to ensure that this is absolutely fit for purpose. And you've mentioned energy as well, and of course, that's part of the strategy really has been your officers, to be fair to them, have pushed really hard to say that this needs to be, whilst it is a 15-year-old vessel, it needs to be trying to benchmark it as though it were a new building. Now, of course, we're not a new building, we're not going to hit those standards, but we're significantly improving beyond where we are at the moment. So hopefully that answers your question, but if you need any more supplementary,
that's
got the team here.
That is helpful, thank you. Rohit, did you have another question?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think it was very similar to kind of the disjuncture that you mentioned about, what we've heard and what we know, and then some of the kind of comments that have come. And I think the one comment I kind of wanted to pick up, and maybe you can respond to this right away, about the Good Hotel is asking staff and visitors to write in support of the planning application. So I just wonder whether you just want to clear that for us right now.
Yeah,
I think
could be that people using the space, so that you got people sleeping in a hotel, which are your typical hotel guests, and then you got people using the space who are basically, living close by, working from their laptops. Could be that some of those local residents who use the space have signed up, but other than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking online at the people that have listed in support, our understanding is that there's a lot of local residents. I mean, yes, people that have stayed in the hotel have perhaps written in support as well if they enjoyed the experience. But yeah, feel free to look online as we did, and it looks like a lot of people that did register in support are residents as well.
Thank you. I think that's bringing us to the end of our questions. Could I perhaps ask Claire, are you able to put the recommendations on screen for us now so we can move to the vote?
Yes.
That's great, thank you. So the recommendation before us is to agree the reasons for approval, and then the rest of the recommendation, which I won't read out to you for reasons of time and also my croaky voice. Could I ask those members eligible to vote, for those in favour to raise their hands, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, that is unanimous. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for your time, Chair.
You are more than welcome to stay for the committee, but we won't be offended if you decide that you want to go off and enjoy the rest of the evening.
May move on if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you. I'm just going to give us 1 minute before we start on the next one to allow our guests to depart if they want to. Can I ask, I know that we were expecting Rob Pearson and Imran Wahid to speak on item 7. Does it appear that either of those people have joined us via Zoom? No, we don't think so. Okay, well, in which case...
Yeah, I have them on the list. They're doing they should be here, so... And they're on my participants list. Well, Rob Pearson is.
Yeah, they were on the list as having registered to speak. We can go straight to the officer presentation.
Chair, they are there.
They are here. Oh, great. In which case, Rob Pearson, can you just confirm that you can hear me okay and that you're all linked up?
Yes, hi everybody, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, we can hear you, thank you. And Imran Wahid, are you here as well?
You may not be.
No, it may be just you. Right, in which case we will move on to item number 7, which is 292 to 294 Plashet Grove. The applicant here is Rob Pearson. You have up to 5 minutes to speak about the application.
Good evening, members. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today in support of the planning application at Plashet Grove on behalf of the applicants Metro Properties Limited. The subject of this application, condition 3, is the last pre-commencement condition required to be discharged in relation to the construction of a 6-storey hotel comprising 85 hotel rooms. Condition 3 requires the submission of a demolition and construction management plan prior to commencement of works. The relevant history here is that the applicant submitted a DCMP to discharge condition 3 in 2020. However, no contractor had been appointed at the time, and the highways officer raised concerns and requested further information. Due to a number of factors such as the pandemic, Brexit, site constraints and the surrounding sensitive issues, the applicant had not been able to appoint a suitable contractor and had not been able to produce a satisfactory DCMP. At your last committee, members requested further justification on this matter, and a letter has been submitted from Taylor Freeman Kataria, who confirms that as a result of COVID and the other factors, that is not suitable to generate a panel of contractors at this time. The point for this is that because they are working through a result of a backlog as a result of the pandemic, and this is referred to in your officer's committee report. However, this does not indicate that there is any unwillingness to progress on behalf of the applicant. Indeed, since your last committee, the applicant has made very significant strides to demonstrate their express wish to commence this development. They have, today, submitted a demolition and construction management plan to the council in order to satisfy the concurrent application to discharge condition 3. This has been prepared by MEC, the development engineers for the project. They have also today submitted a construction phase logistics plan prepared by Peter Thompson Construction Management. Both of these plans have been prepared at extensive cost to the applicant. Best Western have reconfirmed that they will be the occupiers of the proposed development. And as previously mentioned, all other conditions have already been discharged. Importantly, the applicant has also last week paid their SIL and Section 106 contributions in full, totaling £434,000. This has been done to demonstrate to you their total commitment to the scheme. These are not the actions of an applicant trying to impede the implementation of their permission. These are absolutely the actions of a developer trying not to lose their permission. Obviously, officers will not yet have had time to fully digest the submitted information today. However, when they do, we are confident that we'll be on the path to discharging that condition to the satisfaction of everyone. Why then does the applicant require the Section 73 application to be proposed? This is because there is currently no end timeline to those Condition 3 discussions, and the current plan application expires on the 23rd of September this year. Whilst we have every confidence that Condition 3 will be discharged before that time, there is no guarantee of that. And so it is vitally important to the applicant that they are able to implement their permission on the off chance that Condition 3 is not discharged before September. In order to implement the works, the applicant has sought to construct a 3-metre foundation trench and to fill this with concrete. Very importantly, no other works other than the digging of the trench will be permitted until a suitable DCMP has been approved by the authority. Highways environmental health officers have confirmed that they are happy with the application and that the revised condition will therefore protect neighbouring residents. Conditions 18 and 20 on the original permission were attached and will also protect neighbouring residents' amenity during construction, as they require public footpaths to remain unobstructed and set the construction hours. These will also be adhered to by the applicant when digging the trench. On a couple of points raised by members at the last committee, the works to dig the trench and implement the permission will now be undertaken in 1 day and not 2. And also we've reconfirmed that low carbon concrete will be used. Contrary to the recommendation to refuse this application because, I quote, there is no reasonable prospect of the site being brought forward, the breakneck speed at which the applicant has worked and the significant expense they have gone to since the last committee both suggest that the applicant has every intent to bring forward the site, and that with the payment of SIL and the submission of a DCMP, that this prospect now lies firmly in the hands of officers. We therefore hope that you will be able to support this application, or at least defer consideration one more time until such time as your officers have commented on the now submitted DCMP. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could I ask Sean Scott to give our officers' report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I trust you can see my screen.
Yes.
So item 7 relates to 292 to 294 Plashet Grove in East Ham. Here is the site location. And here is an impression of the existing site and surroundings. As you can see, the site fronts onto Plashet Grove. Here are some photos of the site. And you can see there the access marked with a green arrow. So understanding the application, this proposal was last presented to Strategic Development Committee on the 25th of January 2022 with an officer recommendation for approval. Members raised concerns at the committee about the impact of this amendment and the negative precedent that would be created by allowing a start with no end date and to resolve key matters around the demolition and construction management plan. Those matters would be left open and unresolved. SDC resolved to defer the application as members sought assurances that the works proposed as part of the amendment are the minimum that's required and they wouldn't cause a significant adverse impact in terms of sustainability and amenity impacts. Information was sought to ascertain why this application has come forward to prolong the life of the planning permission. Further information has been submitted by the applicant. This is summarised in the committee report and has also been considered in the assessment of this application. And as the planning agent has just told you, some further information has been submitted today in regards to a concurrent application for an approval of details for condition 3. Officers will be considering this information. separately. So the application proposal, it's a Section 73 application to vary condition 3, to change the wording to alter the trigger of the condition from no works shall commence to no works shall commence with the exception of the digging of a trench measuring 3 meters in length and 0.6 meters in width. And this is attached to the planning permission dated 23rd of September 2019, which granted planning permission for the complete demolition of the existing building and the construction of a 6-story new build hotel scheme comprising 85 hotel rooms. So the extant planning permission is referred to here on as the original permission. And that was, as mentioned, approved on the 23rd of September 2019. And the permission will lapse on the 23rd of September 2022. So the reason for this new application, the minor material amendment application is made to vary the wording of condition 3 to allow for the digging, and this is in relation to a demolition and construction management plan, to allow for the digging of a trench on site. The digging of a trench will allow the applicant to make a formal start on site, as there are issues at present in relation to engaging a contractor and therefore a delay in undertaking the DCMP. The proposed amendment would allow for the excavation of a small trench to formally make a start on site. Any further works would require the approval of details as per the original permission. Following the excavation of the trench, it will be filled with concrete. It would be filled with concrete, forming part of the foundations to the development. So here's some key imagery of the proposal, and as you can see marked there in red would be the trench footing. And here's a closer view of that and a section. So the principle of development, the hotel use has been established through an appeal allowed in July 2017, and this is summarised in the report. The approval of the original application in 2019, noting Newham Local Plan Policy J1, which supports the provision of a quality hotel and visitor accommodation within this town centre location, proportionate to the function and character of East Ham Major Centre. The proposal makes a minor change to the wording of condition 3 of the original permission to allow for a small trench to be built, to allow for a formal start to be made before a DCMP is approved by the local planning authority. The proposal has been given careful consideration by officers and is concluded that the amendment could fundamentally affect the delivery of the site, removing the urgency to commence development, offering a loophole which is open to abuse. The failure to go beyond the technical start is contrary to a core principle within the National Planning Policy Framework, which is to deliver sustainable development. The inability to resolve the issue with condition 3 is problematic, potentially remaining unresolved and leaving the site dormant. To date, officers have not been given comfort that the matter resolving the DCMP is resolvable. Officers are therefore of the view that the proposal is unacceptable in principle. So this moves us on to the officer recommendation. Strategic Development Committee is asked to note the committee update and resolve to refuse the planning permission. The reason for refusal: the local planning authority is not satisfied that the proposal would facilitate the delivery of the approved development, but rather that it is a device to extend the life of the planning permission with no reasonable prospect of the site being brought forward. This is contrary to the national approach to prevent land banking of planning permissions, which saw the right to extend planning permission timeframes under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 as amended being removed. The proposal is therefore contrary to the National Planning Policy Framework and the planning and also planning practice guidance, flexible options for planning permissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask my colleagues if they have questions which they would like to address to either the applicant or to the officer? I'd like to thank James Beckles for having joined us. I think you joined just after Claire had started, so I think we might need to ask you not to vote on this item, but you can vote on our final item. Colleen.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I just want a clarification to the officer. He spoke earlier about receiving paperwork regarding the condition 3. And I just want to establish, you said, what date was that you received that?
I received it about an hour and a half ago, this afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Were there further questions? I'd had a couple of questions, which are also for the officer. I just wanted to establish what difference is made in planning terms by the SIL and Section 106 having been paid, I think also today, from how it sounds, and whether that makes a material difference to the matter that we're being asked to consider today. And I'd also be grateful for an opinion, and this could be from you or it might maybe from James or Jane, about the suggestion that we should defer again and whether there would be any positive and constructive reason to do that. You know, I'm keen for us to be reasonable, but I'm keen for us to move forward and make decisions as well.
So what I can say is we haven't requested that they pay these charges. You know, I don't know what weight we can give to it in planning terms for this application. I think it's very limited weight. I would like to kind of defer to a senior officer if they do want to add any more detail in.
Thank you, Sean. That's correct. Chair, if I may just add to Sean's response. The submission of the additional material that we received.
Could you speak up a little bit? We can hear you, but you're a bit muffled.
Sorry, the submission of the additional information that we received, it changes nothing for this application. Our reason for refusal still has merit, and the concerns that we have over the precedent this would set still applies. The applicant has until sometime in September this year before their permission lapses. The additional information that we've received, we would be able to make an internal consultation and provide them with our response within 21 days. So I'm pretty confident that if the material that we've received is satisfactory, we can confirm that to them with an internal consultation.
Thank you. That is really helpful. In which case, I think if members are in agreement, I'd like to suggest that we move to the vote. Is it possible to again share the screen so that we can have the recommendation from officers in front of us, please? Thank you. So our recommendation is that we note the committee update and resolve to refuse planning permission. Can I ask those in favour of refusing planning permission to raise their hands, please? And that is again unanimous. Thank you very much, members. So that concludes this item and brings us on to item 8, which is the development site at Hathaway Crescent. I believe we have a couple of the applicants here with us. I'll give you a moment to come down, sit near a microphone.
Yeah. Sorry. Is there any chance we can open a window, please? It's a bit warm in here.
It is really warm. Sorry.
Helping.
If we're going to try to open a window, I'm going to maybe suggest that we take like a couple of minutes in case anybody wants a comfort break, and then we can come and give you our full attention, hopefully with maybe a little bit of fresh air in here. I might get some more, yes.
Special way to open them.
I'll get you some water.
Thank you. It was supposed to be modern buildings that were like hermetically sealed, but it looks like this one might be as well. Oh, look.
You've been in the 21st century blocks that I've been in 6 months. You know how hot they can be.
I'm sick here.
Yeah. You try it.
Few breaks, possibly.
On camera.
Apologies to those watching online. We're just taking a moment to see if we can open some windows in this very beautiful but increasingly stuffy room that we're in this evening.
Is that actually moving anything? Couldn't see anything moving.
I don't think it was doing anything.
Oh. Oh wow. Hey. As I was saying, everyone could be a schoolkeeper for a day.
Doesn't look it's going to make much difference.
The catch on that one? Can you see one?
Oh no, it doesn't catch on that one.
That one doesn't have a catch either.
Just only the one you got.
That's it.
I think because that window is right at the top, it might actually make a difference. We might get some of the warm air shooting out, you never know.
You did it, well done.
Oh, great. Carleen has managed to open one window.
Oh,
I know. Right. With many thanks to Councillor Lee Parkway for her, as ever, amazing array of skills. We move on to item 8, to the development site at Hathaway Crescent. And I'd like to ask the applicants to address the committee for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Jerry Cassidy. I'm a planning partner at BPW. I'm joined by my virtual client, Mazar Ali, who is a Senior Development Manager at Newham Council. Joined by Architectural Associate, Azra Azra, and the Architectural Partner virtually online as well. Excuse me. As you heard in the last item, with regard to planning balance, delivery of affordable housing must be a very significant factor in that balance. What is perhaps not so clear within the officer's excellent committee report is the extent of the, I won't be dramatic and say housing crisis in both London and Barking and Newham. The loss of council stock, the right to buy in Newham's housing, affordable housing, is significant, and it's a year-on-year thing that happens as without the support, the delivery of this housing. The proposal tonight for 72 units is very significant. They are both London affordable rent, there is a high amount of family accommodation, and the site itself doesn't show the classic manifestations of overdevelopment. There is also a grant imperative tonight. We must make a start on site within days of achieving consent in order to secure our GLA funding. This is an estate infill and renewal, and therefore the amount of consultation is obviously significant, and we take great store in asking existing residents, who are the experts, for their views. Both before the consultation, we approached the Development Control Members Forum in April. We then had a proper online consultation with 800 leaflets. We then and had 2 Zoom meetings because we were down in COVID lockdown. Then we went round door-to-door knocking, handing out sheets. And then we presented again the results of that to the Development Control Members Forum. And after that, we also had a stand in the Community Fun Day. in the middle of August. And then we had another round of virtual events at the end of August as well as the application being on the council's website for all that time. The residents' concerns, as you probably picked up from the committee report, predominantly is the loss of parking, the estate management issues, what we're going to do with the central landscaping area, construction, traffic, and the type of new people moving in. What has changed as a result of the consultation? Well, we've reduced the building heights in Site B. We've introduced a whole range of gym equipment, play equipment for disabled children, etc. As a result of the Fund Day consultation. We've also formalised and included extra car parking spaces. We've rationalised the bin stores, footway improvements, and there's a list of other items, including working with the community to evolve a new community hub space in the middle of the landscaped areas, and of course improvements to antisocial behaviour. I'm now going to defer to the officer's report to give the details. Myself and my team are here, no doubt, to answer questions on car parking, noise management, the design evolution after the design review panel, etc., and we would love to be able to assist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move to the officer's report, it occurs to me that we should also say for the minutes that we did make a site visit to Hathaway Crescent. I think, Alan, I think you and I were the members of the committee.
I remember that. I have been to Hathaway Crescent, but only once, I think.
It's in April.
Well, we certainly did have a members' site visit where we went to the location, saw the existing buildings, walked around the kind of three main points, and were shown some of the current features. And conducted ourselves in line with the way that we're advised to conduct site visits.
Nice of you to remember me being there, but I'm sure I wasn't.
Excuse me. So could I please ask for the officer report on this item?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Item 8 relates to the development sites at Hathaway Crescent in Manor Park. This is an application submitted by Newham's Affordable Housing Delivery Team. The application site is located in the northeast of the borough. As you can see, it relates to 3 individual plots as well as the central open space and access to Hathaway Crescent. The existing buildings on the estate were built in the 1960s and are predominantly 4 or 8 stories in height, with one 15-storey tower and several single-storey bungalows. There's also a derelict community centre on the site. These are the 3 sites to be developed. The proposal for Site A is a 6-storey building to provide 23 new homes. For Site B, there's a 7-storey building to provide 26 new homes. And Site C is another 6-storey building providing 23 new homes. On the central open space, it's proposed to improve the landscaping, provide a play area, provide a pavilion to be used by existing and future residents, and generally improve the attractiveness and usability of that space. Planning permission, as stated, is sought for the demolition of the existing buildings and the erection of 3 buildings of 7, 6 and 6 stories across 3 development parcels to provide 72 new residential units. This is a visual of the building on Site A. This is Site B and Site C. The key planning considerations are the principle of development, affordable housing, density and design, impact upon amenity, housing mix, quality of accommodation and transport and travel. In terms of the Principle of development, the site would provide 72 new homes, making a positive contribution to housing target delivery within an existing residential environment. Site B previously accommodated the Hathaway Community Centre, which closed in 2013. The site has become increasingly derelict and attracts antisocial behaviour and illegal activity. Alternative community facilities operate in the area, which are better located and in better condition, and therefore the indirect loss of the Hathaway Community Centre is considered acceptable. Furthermore, the loss of the building would be mitigated for in the form of a children's play space and pavilion in the central open space, available for use by both existing and future occupants. The principle of development is supported. Affordable housing. The proposed development provides 100% affordable housing, all of which would be London affordable rent. It does not provide any intermediate housing, which is normally required by policy. However, the proposals would meet an identified need for affordable housing in the local area and would assist the council in reducing its housing waiting list. To ensure the delivery of 100% affordable housing in accordance with the proposed unit mix, a unilateral undertaking is to be signed by the applicant agreeing this. The housing provision is therefore supported. Design and density. The development will be of a relatively low density overall, reflecting the low PTAL rating of the site and the widespread open space provision. Scale and massing. The proposed buildings would constitute a natural continuation of the existing cluster of tall buildings on the estate and would not materially affect longer range views in the area. To the layout, Building A would replace disused garages which currently attract antisocial behaviour. The building would activate this corner, providing a sense of safety and security. Building B would replace the derelict community centre and act as a wayfinding for residents and visitors arriving to the estate. The building would also provide an appropriate transition between the existing and proposed built form. Building C would activate the southernmost corner of the site, providing natural surveillance to the existing pedestrian alleyway. The building has been designed to maximise active frontage. The proposals would improve the pedestrian and cycle circulation within the estate by providing new links and access points, aiding permeability through the site and improving access to green spaces. The proposals respond to the characteristics of the existing buildings in the surrounding area. This includes the angled form, brick colour and balcony treatments. The proposals in terms of density and design are supported. Impact on amenity. The closest facing window-to-window distances between the existing and proposed buildings is 21 metres, with the majority achieving more than this. Building A is a minimum of 5.5 metres from the boundary with the rear gardens of dwellings on Shakespeare Crescent. This would have some impact on the amenities of neighbouring occupiers. However, the building would be sited lower down than the houses on Shakespeare Crescent, reducing the overall impact. The west elevation of Building C would be a minimum of 2.5 metres from the boundary with the rear gardens of the houses on Shakespeare Crescent, which again would have some impact on the amenities of the occupiers. However, as with Building A, the site levels means it would sit lower than the existing houses. Balconies on the west elevation have been avoided to reduce overlooking. Screens would be used at the side of the balconies to further reduce overlooking towards Shakespeare Crescent. The majority of neighbouring windows assessed to meet the BRE test for daylight and sunlight in relation to Building A. A number of windows fail in relation to Building B, but the number of failures significantly reduces when taking account of existing overhanging balconies and other obstacles. It is noted that the BRE allows a greater degree of tolerance in urban environments and notes that in an area with modern high-rise buildings, obstructions may be unavoidable. All neighbouring windows assessed in relation to Building C pass the daylight and sunlight tests. The noise generated by air source heat pumps are not expected to exceed baseline background levels and would therefore not materially impact upon amenity. The proposals in terms of the impact on amenity are therefore supported. 28 of the 72 units are family size, which equates to 39% and therefore meets the 39% target in the local plan. This housing mix is therefore supported. Quality of accommodation. All units are dual aspect and meet the minimum minimum standards for internal and external space. All windows are at least 21 metres from any facing windows. All buildings are compliant with BRE recommendations on daylight and sunlight levels. Turning to noise and vibrations, the buildings would be located in close proximity to both London Underground lines and National Rail lines, and therefore the area does experience high levels of external noise. This would be mitigated against in the form of high specification glazing, whilst cooling and heating ventilation systems would be installed on affected facades. Whilst windows would not be fixed shut, residents would have to sacrifice fresh air and natural ventilation to achieve a suitable internal noise level, effectively sealing themselves into their homes. This would undermine the quality of accommodation provided. It is acknowledged that the environmental health officers have objected to the scheme due to the unsatisfactory acoustic environment. However, in this instance, significant weight is given to the borough's priority to deliver affordable homes. Furthermore, there is no record of noise complaints being made by existing nearby residents with regard to railway noise. 8 units would be wheelchair accessible, equating to 11%. This consists of both ground and upper floor accommodation to provide a variety of living options for wheelchair users. Upper floor units would be accessed via lifts. Blue badge parking spaces would also be provided for each wheelchair accessible home in close proximity to building entrances. On balance, the quality of accommodation is supported. Transport and travel. The loss of the garages, given they are not large enough for the modern car, would not increase parking stress in the locality and would also aid in reducing antisocial behaviour in the locality. The development would be car-free with the exception of the 8 blue badge parking spaces. No future occupants would be issued with a permit for any of the existing spaces on the site. Residential cycle parking would meet London Plan standards in terms of quantity. Apologies, that should be quantity. Details relating to the mix of cycle parking will be secured by condition. Waste will be collected by the refuse vehicle that already serves the site and as a result would not generate additional vehicle movement. The transport statement supporting the application suggests there would be 7 to 8 deliveries per day, made up predominantly of postal and light goods deliveries. And as such, deliveries are also unlikely to have a materially adverse impact on highway operations. The proposal in terms of transport and travel is supported. Consultation was carried out with neighbouring residents. We received 5 responses, 1 in support and 4 objections. These are noted in the officer report. Therefore, turning to the recommendation, the Strategic Development Committee is asked to note the committee update and resolve to agree the reasons for approval as set out in the officer report and delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Development to grant planning permission subject to the completion of a legal agreement under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act based on the heads of terms in Appendix 2 and the conditions listed in Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to turn to my colleagues and welcome to the discussion, James Beckles, and ask if anybody has questions which they would like to address either to the applicant or the officer. James.
Thanks, Chair. And I do remember attending the walkabout, although Alan might not have been there.
So easy to mix you up.
I know.
I do apologise.
Throughout the consultation, I know there were some virtual and written consultations about the community centre that was on the site, and residents were quite excised that they were losing this communal space. It's been closed for quite a while. The chair and I and other officers attended the space, and it looked like quite a interesting place, and residents had voiced concerns. So I do wonder, it's not necessarily disappointing not to see it in the plans, but can the team explain why the community centre hasn't received the same level of regeneration as these new blocks that are going to be built? Albeit affordable housing is always good, but a community centre does bring communities together, and the area did have a park. And is that going to receive any sort of Section 6 or any sort of redevelopment inclusive?
Sure. First of all, the community centre hasn't actually operated there for almost a decade. So there isn't any functional loss regardless of whether or not this development goes ahead or not, there will be no community centre. So we're not in a position where there is a loss of community centre that is required in order to enable this development. The reduction in the services and the transfer of the services was part of the council's own cabinet decision as to go to more appropriate locations. And furthermore, if there was if we were looking at sites for new community centres, then this wouldn't be a site, because the council planning policy is to situate new community centres in town centre locations or locations that are highly accessible. So whereas we absolutely recognise the aspirations of the local community, in effect, we're not replacing anything because there's nothing there to replace. However, saying that, we do recognise that it did create an important focal point, which is why that we've been encouraged to develop a kind of more community-related pavilion meeting place in the centre of the landscape, more than what we were going to propose right at the start. And we've actually developed that far more, and we'd like to also engage with the local community exactly what the nature of that would be and what that would service. The other thing is, of course, the aspiration that the community centre would ever be brought back to life. As the officer said, the building's derelict. So the amount of investment needed to actually to bring that back in, and then to find an occupier, which of course is not going to be the council, because the council's already decided that there are appropriate services where is actually going to be very slim to non-existent. So I think what we can do is we can take the spirit of the community gathering place and translate that into some literally concrete proposals in the central area.
Thank you. Colleagues, Colleen.
Thank you, Chair. Looking through the papers that we have received and listening to the officer's presentation, there was something that really struck me, and I felt like I needed to say something. And it was on the points that were made around quality of accommodation. And you spoke specifically about windows not being able to be opened and being kept shut due to noise, external noise. And to me, that just seems a little bit remiss of me if I do not mention that, especially in a time of COVID, where over a long period of time, we've been almost forced to keep our windows open, to keep our families safe. It doesn't make much sense to me that we would be building properties where you're unable to open windows, or it's highly advised that you keep them shut due to the noise that's outside. And then there was this that I heard the need. Anyway, don't worry about that. So I just want to understand more in regards to the idea that windows need to be kept shut, which would not allow for fresh air or natural ventilation. Because the next line underneath the presentation that the officer gave was, but because of the need of housing, it's not an issue, basically. And I just want to understand that more.
Yeah.
And so I would like, whether it be the applicants or the officer to explain, actually, I would like the officer to explain what it is that they mean by that in regards to what it is that we're looking at today.
We are acknowledging that it is a major shortcoming in the proposals. We are acknowledging environmental health's objection to it. However, in this instance, we are attributing greater weight to the mayoral priority of delivering affordable homes.
guess the way that I understood it was a kind of planning balance where we weigh the impact of the less than ideal noise and vibration against the delivery of the affordable homes and the other benefits. And that's a matter the officers weighed up and given us one recommendation. It's a matter for us to consider as well. Councillor Singh Verdi, I can see your hand raised. Forgive me, I'm unsure whether that relates to the earlier item or whether you wanted to come in on this one, please.
It is, Chair, it is on the other one. I did try to put my hand down, but I don't seem to have any luck with that.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to check. Sometimes it's hard to keep an eye on the virtual hands. I did have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask before I come back to my colleagues. I know this is something that people in the room will be aware of, but just to make it completely clear for other people who might be watching and might not be aware, I know there is some scepticism, and understandably so, about what the definition of affordable is. And I just wanted to seek some clarification from the officer that when we say London affordable rent, this is actually a product which is very, very close to social rent in terms of the actual rent that residents would be paying. And these are homes which are being developed by the council and will be let to people on the council waiting list. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. So as I said, just to make that clear for anybody watching online. I was interested though, just a genuine question. Given the need in Newham for family homes, I note that 39% family provision is policy compliant. I don't know whether it's compliant with the percentage of people on our list who are looking for family homes. And I just wondered whether you'd explored bringing that percentage of family homes up at all.
There's two or three things on that. First of all, that there is also an overwhelming need for 2-bedroom units and 1-bedrooms as well. We felt that the typology, the flat typology, was more suited to a policy compliant mix of rather than you would have if it was townhouses or it was masonettes, that kind of stuff. That would probably be more suitable to family accommodation. To be honest, one of the driving factors was making the site sweat as much as it could to get the delivery of affordable homes, which is why we took the view to make sure to do the policy compliant. I understand the aspiration to do more. We don't actually believe that this is the correct site for a greater delivery of family accommodation as such, when you've got the balance of 2-bedders and 1.
I can see what you mean, but I do sometimes worry that you hear this kind of view alluded to about, but basically, I mean, some people even come out and say, oh, people with small children shouldn't be living in flats. And I think, we have to be able to build high quality flats that provide family accommodation and places where people can stay and their children can go to school. I think particularly if we look across London, increasingly flats are the only homes being built. So if we want places for families to live, a lot of those will need to be flats. They just need to be good enough to be conducive to a good and healthy and safe and happy and settled family life.
Yeah. And I think also some of the flat typologies, now I'm not the architect and the architects are kicking my legs at the moment, that if you have, you can have central podiums, for instance, that then provide that more play space, etc. This was very much quite constrained sites, and we wanted to make sure that it ticked all the other boxes. So as a result, it was a kind of tall, slim kind of typology. So that's kind of why we decided to just stick to the policy compliant. But I'm sure that my client will take that on board for his future housing delivery aspirations.
Okay, thank you. The only other couple of questions I had was, first of all, about your interactions with the design review panel.
Yes.
I noticed from the end that you declined the offer to go to a chair's workshop. which I do feel morally obligated to push back on, because we spend a lot of time as this committee emphasising the importance of a design review panel, the great weight that we give to their view, how positively we look upon developers that engage with them in a collaborative way and don't push back against the suggestions they're making. I mean, you can see where I'm going with this.
Absolutely.
As the planning authority, we have to have an even-handed assessment of applications, and so I felt I did need to raise that. And my only final question was about the mention that you made of starting on site, you hope, in order to secure the GLA funding, which sounds to me as if something's been left a bit late. Someone's been working right up to a deadline in a way that maybe was a bit suboptimal, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, and therein lies part of the answer for the design review panel. Was that we did have a deadline to meet. I may throw that back to my client as to
Starting earlier have meant that you could have had time with the design review panel.
It could have done, yes. But bear in mind that we did actually meet with them twice, which for a scheme of such small kind of, which is 6 stories and 7 stories, is actually quite a lot in comparison to some of the larger. We also felt that we had made significant progress, and I'm now going to hand you over to my my architectural partner, who's going to tell you all the other things we've done beyond the second design review panel. Neil.
Thanks, Jerry. Just thanks for that comment. I think it's probably worth noting that we had the second DRP review over 3 months before the application then was submitted. So it was partly to do with the kind of scheduling issue and also partly to do with the programme delivery issue. And again, we can let the client comment on the programme delivery issue. But we also believe that it's the process of design review is really important. And having had 2, that they were very helpful conversations to have. In relation to the second one, there are a number of comments raised about the kind of contextual approach in relation to particular architectural expression, and that where we were in the design development process, it was a very good point for talking around that. So we took those comments on board and worked quite closely with planning officers and design officers over the next 3 months, really, to develop that further, so that we could point by point go through the comments and respond to them individually. So in our view, we have taken on board the comments that were made wholeheartedly, and we believe a high quality design was produced as a consequence.
It's helpful, thank you. I guess I'll just conclude by saying that it's noticeable when you read through the section from the design review panel that it ends noting that a chair's workshop was offered and that it's disappointing that wasn't taken up. And I think that disappointment is shared certainly by me. If I may speak on behalf of my fellow committee members as well. James, and then I'll come back to Colleen.
Thank you, Chair. Just referring back to the site visit, which was very helpful in terms of understanding the layout and also where certain ASB, fly tipping and other things happen. It does say in the report in 201 that secured by design before the groundworks commence, there will be a plan that's put forward with a scheme for local crime prevention measures. And it's slightly innocuous, it's a bit vague. So I'm just wondering what those prevention measures be to stop people fly tipping and dumping there, besides the loss of, say, car parking spaces or garages. Will natural surveillance or additional lighting in the area be part of that?
Absolutely, you've got the 2 of them. I mean, of course, the introduction of residential in those 3 areas that are the subject of antisocial behaviour to begin with will be, I don't use the word lightly, transformational. These they're not overlooked. Last week, I think the police were called in to site A, the garages, and that's now all boarded off. You can't get near it. So that's part of the architectural brief, is to hard bake natural surveillance in. It's not an easy way out. It's not saying, oh, well, it can wash its own face. It really is part of the brief, which is why there are very few areas that are actually not overlooked, or even the rear access areas to the to the proposed blocks have all got natural surveillance. And of course, we've utilised the natural surveillance of the existing development as well. And that's been really important in the feedback that we got from the residents.
During the design process, we had a number of meetings with the Secure by Design designing out crime officer when we went through the details of where entrances would be located, what boundary treatments would be had to front gardens, side entrance, and we went through those details with her. Now, obviously, those will be conditioned in kind of further design details, but she was, really positive at the moves that we're making on the site because of the antisocial behaviour that's going there at the moment. Our site, when we had the open fun day, there was also a stall where the police had their own stall, and they came over and they said, they're really keen to see something happening, especially at the Garrett site, because that is a site that they've had to visit quite often, unfortunately.
That's helpful, thank you. Colleen, and then Alan, I'll come to you.
You want to take Alan first?
Yeah, why not? Alan.
Right, well, it's not quite planning, but I know the numbers in Hathaway Crescent go around the whole estate clockwise, the existing flats. So I'm assuming these three will need names. You've already been bending your minds to those, which is not relevant to time. Something Shakespearean that comes in threes, possibly the Daughters of King Lear rather than witches.
Or the three witches, perhaps, Scottish.
That's because King James VI first believed in him.
And I think maybe this is obviously partly a point that might be asked by someone who's spending a lot of time going around knocking on people's doors and looking for addresses. But also there is a planning point here in terms of kind of legibility and wayfinding and people knowing exactly where they are and the new buildings having their own sense of place. So perhaps we could just leave that with you.
Already got some ideas.
Not the witches. Colleen.
So I have other questions.
Sorry.
I wanted to ask in regards to point 157 on the papers we received. It talks about the amount of wheelchair accessible homes within the buildings, which are absolutely great. It's good in regards to the amount. However, it does speak about some of those units being on the ground floor, and then some of those units being on the first 4 floors of the building, giving opportunity for wheelchair residents to be able to have properties on different floors. I guess my question I want to ask is, in light of what we know around fire safety, around getting out buildings quickly, if in event of a fire, how will these residents get out of these buildings?
The disabled?
First 4 floors.
Of any resident, or were you talking about disabled, a wheelchair accessible?
I'm assuming that if a building is on
Yeah.
fire, then lifts do not run, unless you're saying to me they do run in these buildings at a certain point. I just want some reassurances.
Sure. I think before I hand over to Azri, we'll have a full and colourful advice on that. We did originally have them in the lower, but the case officer, Claire, quite rightly said, well, we should increase the choice for disabled users, which means that you should actually have a spread throughout the building. So it's a response to that, but I'll let you talk about fire safety.
Yeah. So the current regulation in terms of residential is still a stay put fire strategy. So that is kind of, I suppose, the baseline of the fire strategy statement. But part of the reason, but on top of that, there's now the requirement in London Plan to have evacuation lifts for each building. So each building would have 1 evacuation lift. And building B, which is where we have upper level wheelchair units, they have 2 lifts in that building, one being a fire lift, and the other one is an evacuation lift, because obviously those 2 have separate needs. But I guess in regards to the movement of fire strategy in terms of kind of, are we staying with the stay put strategy, or is it going to move on to that is something that I suppose is kind of outside of the remit of the specific planning application?
Well, there is a fire strategy report that does accompany that, and you'll see that there is a planning condition as well relating to that. We certainly haven't had anything back in consultation from it. I'm hoping that two-lift solution answers specifically a question on that block.
I think the reassurance that there is an evacuation lift.
Yes.
And that's secured by
I guess my main concerns are, for instance, if lift A is out of order, then even how is that resident going to get to their property? You know, so it's just about let us think forward rather than, oh, let's deal with this once it happens. Okay, and just in regards to, I can't see that in the conditions. Maybe I've just.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
The fire evacuation lift is condition 33. We've also got condition 28, which complies with the fire statement.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And just going back to, I did see that you wanted to answer, and I didn't give you opportunity, and then we moved straight on. But I need to be satisfied with the question that I previously asked regarding windows. I do note in 152 on our papers, it does say that whilst windows should not be fixed shut, obviously residents would have to sacrifice fresh air and so on and so forth. So I just want an opinion from you guys as the applicants.
Yeah.
What that would look like in regards to, would you guys live in that property? Would it be acceptable?
And thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. It's certainly not substandard, and I just want to make that clear that there isn't that kind of balance between the need for affordable housing and putting residents here. And the case officers will again correct me if I'm wrong, but we originally got the environmental health response. A lot of that's verbatim on the basis that the particular office had at that time, I think a problem with Brunel Works, I think, where there was a lot of complaints over the noise, and residents were opening their windows and there was railway noise or tube noise. I think you know where they are. That didn't have alternative mitigation. It didn't have an alternative to those residents in a hot summer night. You either opened a window or you didn't. Now, what we are proposing, you might have heard of comfort cooling. This is called beneficial cooling, which is actually a kind of step up. It's a more kind of organic approach where it's always on. You don't switch it on and off per se, and it looks for the kind of the background temperature, and it kicks in gently. But it doesn't mean the flat itself needs to be hermetically sealed. You can have the windows open in your living room, and you can just close the window in your bedroom if you want to go. So it's not, and even if you didn't want to use it, you could obviously still open up the window. Now, clearly there is a significant noise concern there. With this approach, as I say, it's kind of organic. It can kick in, you don't know that it's really operating, and it actually works on kind of ambient temperatures, which mean, in effect, in a really hot summer evening, it's better to close the window. You're going to get more cooling effect as a result of that. Now, I'm not saying that solution is absolutely optimal. You would love to just have natural ventilation and be done with it. But that's the solution that you see on all these other developments throughout London that you pass the train on. So there is actually alternative mitigation as well. That's kind of approach. And you'll interestingly notice that the design review panel actually wanted us to build closer to the tracks as a result. We kicked back and did a kind of a balance between the two. So yes, you may need to close the windows, but it's sealing the flat.
That is very helpful. Thank you. Sorry.
Can I just add on to that? I know energy and energy bills is a big concern, especially with affordable homes. So all of these buildings and the homes are built to passive house, low energy building standards. So although yes, it is mechanical cooling and there's a mechanical system there running in the background, it shouldn't cause kind of undue stress, hopefully, in terms of the energy bills of the future residents.
And that's a really good point. Part of the, I think there's a condition or a section, a planning obligation that we will, as part of the welcome pack, say to residents, first of all, this is in existence, this is how it works, this is how you use it, and then also allay the fears, as Ashley said, about, well, you're not going to switch it on because that's going to cost money. So actually be very realistic about how much it is as well. So it's not a matter of residents, especially residents off the council waiting list, you've just got to put up with what you have. It's very much geared towards the mitigation element.
That is reassuring, thank you. And I think, I think it's for us as a committee to weigh up what we've been told in terms of the objections and the mitigations. And I have to admit, I'm also thinking about the living conditions of some of my residents at the moment who are on the list and who, would very much appreciate having a social home at social rent that they could stay in rather than the insecure places they are at the moment. So that factors into the balance as well. Were there any further questions from the committee? Are we wrapping up? Wrapping up as the clock chimes. In which case, could I ask please for the recommendation to the committee to come back onto the shared screen so we can view it? Assuming you're, oh, here we go. So you started to share your screen. Thank you.
Sorry. Can you see that?
Thank you very much. The committee's asked to note the committee update and resolve to agree the reasons for approval with all the further details that are up there. Could I ask committee members, please, to vote in favour of this recommendation? Thank you. That is another unanimous vote. Thank you very much. And that concludes the final substantive item on the agenda. And the only remaining item is the date of the next meeting, which is the 19th of April 2020.